Once upon a time, an elderly guy by the name of Enoch used to reside in a historic city at the foot of a magnificent mountain. Enoch was a bold and curious man who was always willing to explore the mysteries of the world he lived in. His days were defined by the vibrant colors of the forest, the sound of streams running, and the whisper of the wind through the trees. But everything changed one day when a group of mysterious men visited Enoch. The sight of these tall, austere guys with serious looks in their eyes made Enoch shudder. They spoke softly and with a tone of alien wisdom. When the men approached Enoch one evening as the sun was setting and the sky had turned a rich purple color, he nodded, intrigued and unable to contain his curiosity. The men led Enoch out of his city and into the clouds and the heavens, passing through thick forests and rugged terrain. The journey was difficult and drawn out, but Enoch had a strange feeling of purpose that kept him going. After what seemed like days, they arrived at a lonely and ominous location in the celestial realm. The atmosphere was heavy with fear. Amid their descent into this eerie skyscape, Enoch noticed that their surroundings were growing darker and more menacing. He could feel the bone-chilling frost seeming to seep into his bones as heavy clouds hid the sky above. He was led by the men to the edge of a huge, terrifying pit that exuded pure evil. What he saw in front of him shocked and astounded him at the same time. There was a severe darkness over the place, a black mist that swallowed everything in its path. There was no light to be found, and it seemed as though the thick darkness was closing in on him from all sides. In the heart of the darkness, a black fire blazed non-stop, casting eerie shadows that danced and flared ominously. A river of fire twisted and turned through the desolate landscape, its violent currents sending out waves of heat that clashed with lone ice spots. The river made an otherworldly symphony of noises when it approached the ice, which was burning and steaming. Enoch watched with horror and curiosity as the ice was being dried up by the fire, just to have it freeze over again in a few minutes. And as they dug farther into this scary region, Enoch's eyes were drawn to several brutal prisons. The atmosphere was filled with the pained screams of tormented spirits who lived in these menacing, dehumanizing dwellings. He felt terrible for the people who were incarcerated there, and the mere sight of these places chilled him to the bone. The dark, merciless angels that roamed this cursed area of the sky actually gave Enoch a scare. These were unlike any creatures he had ever seen. Their wings were tattered and dark, and their features were twisted with hate. They had chains, whips, and other torture implements with them. Their stare cold and soulless, they tortured with no remorse or regret. Enoch watched in horror as these dreadful angels inflicted unbearable suffering on their helpless victims. The screams of the anguished souls filled the air, an unending symphony of anguish. There was nothing but unceasing pain there, and neither hope nor light were welcome. Enoch felt a strange feeling of duty despite his overwhelming sense of fear. He knew he could not leave these spirits to suffer in this terrible place. He mustered all his courage and approached one of the black angels. His voice faltering, he asked, "Why do you do this? Why must these spirits suffer like this?" The black angel glanced coldly at Enoch, its eyes burning with an inexplicable fire. "This is the fate they have earned," it replied in a voice that sounded as though it were echoing from the depths of the chasm. "They are here because of their misdeeds in this country of perpetual pain. There's no escape, no pardon." Enoch's heart pounded with both sorrow and compassion. He could not bear the thought of these souls suffering through such endless agony. "There must be some way to help them," he pleaded. "Is there no way to make them both happy?" The two gloomy-looking men approached Enoch, their eyes sunken and gloomy. One of them spoke in a hoarse voice, "This place is ready for the wicked, for people who disobey the Lord and carry out immoral deeds." The black angel gave him a mocking and contemptuous look, saying, "You are simply a mortal. What hope is there for you to defeat the powers of darkness that control this place?" Enoch exclaimed, "Whoa, whoa." The other man went on in a serious tone, "It's for people who, like the dirty people of Sodom, contaminate kids in weird ways, for sorcerers and witches who tinker with demons, for the liars, the thieves, and the jealous, who find delight in their transgressions." When he heard what they had to say, Enoch's gut gave way. How in the world could someone commit such horrible crimes? This pit has been made for those who steal men's souls in secret, declared the first man, who kills the impoverished by strangling them with their meager belongings, who hoards their money with avarice, while others starve and freeze before their very eyes. The second man spoke with a tone of scorn. It is for those who deny their Creator, who worship false idols devoid of soul and vitality, built only of stone and wood. Enoch surveyed the desolate, charred terrain surrounded by towering stone walls. He was overcome with fear and trembled in voice, saying, "Surely no soul could be so corrupted as to deserve this eternal torment." The two men exchanged a sly glance, the first one saying, "You have no idea the depths of man's depravity. Many evil souls are awaiting their fate in this fiery pit." At that moment, a scream that sent shivers down the plain was heard. Enoch turned to see a pitiful figure being drawn by invisible hands toward a massive fissure in the ground. Bursts of yellow flame rushed out of the crack, along with thick clouds of black smoke. The figure struggled against its invisible captors, scratching at the pale earth. The persona exclaimed, "Please, please, have mercy. I will repent, I swear it." But the men had no empathy. That cur revered his own deities, one of whom had a spat. He sends others to damnation by means of the images of his gloomy self. Enoch's plea seemed to have little effect on the men. The first man stated quite clearly, "This judgment has been set by the Almighty. All we are is the Almighty Justice's enforcers." The other man nodded somberly. On earth, kindness was extended to those who really asked for forgiveness. However, for those steadfastly dedicated to evil, he allowed the idea to linger in the air. The person gave one last agonized howl and disappeared into the flaming crack. When the shouts subsided, Enoch felt his knees weaken. Then Enoch felt a power beyond himself pull him from this dreadful place. Like ghosts, the two guys began to disappear into the night. "Take heed of what you have witnessed, Enoch," rang out in one of the guys' voices throughout, "and celebrate that you are among those who honor the Lord and are virtuous." Enoch felt as though he were falling through an endless pit of darkness. Before he blacked out, he dreaded to get that last sight of that world of never-ending suffering. In another episode in the story, three strange individuals suddenly lifted Enoch into the heavens while he was walking down a road. He was taken to the second heaven by them. When the men arrived, they showed Enoch a great blackness that was thicker and deeper than any darkness on earth. As his eyes adjusted, he started to notice the shadows of imprisoned individuals hanging in midair. They seemed to be anticipating a terrible decision. The prisoners were being guarded by angels, but these weren't just any angels. They appeared to be made of an even more unsettling darkness than what was around them. The men who had brought Enoch the news turned to face the dark angels, who were crying and wailing day and night. "Why are these ones being tormented unceasingly?" Enoch asked, turning to face them. "These are the souls that turned away from the Lord," the men said gravely, ignoring God's instructions as they willingly collaborated and betrayed their terrible Lord, who is also imprisoned in the fifth heaven. Enoch felt deeply sorry for the miserable captives and their terrifying celestial defenders. They cried out, "Man of God, please pray to the Lord on our behalf." And Enoch was taken aback. "Merely a mere man. Who am I to ask angels for help?" he replied. "I have no idea what problems or what awaits me in the future. Who is going to pray for my soul?" Enoch felt troubled by the miserable angels' predicament, even though he was unable to ask for their pardon. He knew that he had been shown a glimpse of the terrible destiny that awaited anyone who disobeyed the Lord's commands and conspired with the disobedient ruler. Noticing that disobeying the Lord would only lead to an eternity of darkness and misery similar to what he had witnessed, Enoch chose to live as a man of God, enduring life's trials with faith. He followed the moral path in the hopes of continuing to be under the Lord's grace, even though he had no idea what lay ahead. He would never forget the eerie cries of the condemned inmates and their horrifyingly weeping guards, fearing that he would err and suffer the same terrible fate. I appreciate your viewing.